Nobody doing it better. Y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick back, relax, the TWSN.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sitdown Morning Show with Malik Wright. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, who's also the producer today, Daniel Alameda. Got a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to talk about. Before we do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live, when we upload content from the TWSN studios. I want to start us off talking about Stefon Diggs and his potential loss that it has on the Houston Texans and their season outlook. Obviously, Stefon Diggs gets injured with a non-contact knee injury. I wanted to have the video clip to play, but we had a little bit of technical difficulties. But you got to wonder how that affects the outlook of the Houston Texans season, or does it even at all? Because I think in large part we all viewed him as a I think we all viewed him as a as a playoff contender with or without him. It's more so how they navigate, the losses, the loss of a Stefon Diggs, because you do lose a veteran, you do lose someone who defenses respect, you do lose that breakaway game changer in a Stefon Diggs. And again, we don't know officially if this is going to cost him his entire season, but you got to think it be non-contact. And for us not hearing anything about it so far, and I certainly went through my channels, they haven't heard anything about it yet. It feels like they're probably getting a second and third medical opinions before they announce the inevitable. It's very reminiscent of the Rashid Rice situation. So I'm curious to see what takes place with Stefon Diggs and if we see him suit up for the remainder of the season, or if this is the end for his season. What does that look like for the Texans moving forward? Daniel, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the Texans have a lot of different options right now, and I think that this doesn't preclude them from not going after a guy, right? Whether it's Stefon Diggs isn't even out for the year. I think they got to go out and trade for somebody like a name I've seen float around, and I think a name that could be good is a guy like Deontay Johnson. I think a guy like Deontay Johnson could be, very valuable to this Houston Texans team, and I think that their weapons are all over the place. I think Nico Collins is a surefire when he's in so far this year. He's been a surefire top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. But you look at the opposite side, a guy that's disappointed, not just me, but disappointed everybody, is Tank Dell. Tank Dell is a guy who I watched last year who, respectfully, I was giving him somewhat comps to a lower version of a Tyreek Hill, and that's really what he was doing for the Houston Texans offense last year. He was playing in the slot, he was playing on the outside, and he had such a great connection with CJ Stroud. And this year, whether it was injuries or whether they're just not on the same page or whether it's the inclusion of Stefon Diggs, because now, Tank Dell's really playing the wide receiver 3 role, he's just been non-effective. He's been just very much absent when it comes to, being a consistent threat throughout the entire course of the game. So when I look at the Houston Texans and Stefon Diggs, it really is up to, the Houston Texans to see what can they come and turn around the season with, because I think Stefon Diggs has been very good for them. I think he's been a safety blanket for CJ Stroud. But like I said, this Houston Texans team has the chance to really come out here and make some noise this year. And I think that they really have a chance to come out and make some noise in the playoffs. But it's your weapons are hurt. CJ Stroud is really playing. He's playing his ass off right now. But at some point, you really got to look at the weapons and say, hey, we need some added, oomph. And it's kind of weird because this entire season, this entire offseason and heading into the year, we were seeing the exact opposite. They had a plethora of guys, and we see a guy like Noah Brown, who was, against the Cincinnati Bengals. I remember watching him last year, and he absolutely torched the Bengals. And what did they do with him? They basically threw him away for chump change, saying, hey, we don't need you. We got other guys on the roster. We got Xavier Hutchinson. We got other guys that we can rely on as the 4th wide receiver, as the 5th wide receiver. And now we see a guy like Noah Brown right now who's balling out for the Commanders. So I think the Houston Texans are in a tough spot. Obviously, you hate to lose your top 2 wide receivers, but I'm still confident in them, and I would be very shocked, in my opinion, and as we look at the trade deadline in the future, I'd be very shocked if they didn't go out there and trade for somebody. Like I said, Deontay Johnson's the first name that really pops out. He's a guy in Carolina who's on the final year of his contract. We saw, DeAndre Hopkins get traded for, not a very high pick. I think Deontay Johnson's worth less than that. So I think if I'm the Houston Texans, I think we could see a trade for somebody like Deontay Johnson for a 4th round or 5th round pick. So the Houston Texans, it remains to be seen how bad the injury is. And like you said, you brought up a great point. It very reminiscent to the Rashee Rice thing, to where, hey, they're not going to make any announcement. And then you see people on social media who are saying, well, we got some hope for him. It didn't look that bad. Well, it looked pretty bad. So you hope the best for him, and you hope that he's out for just a short, 4 weeks and can come back, before the end of the season. But like I said, this Houston Texans team's in a very, very, very interesting spot. And if I'm a Texans fan, I'm happy. I'm confident. I'd be concerned about the wide receiver room, but all around what this team has put forth, and quite frankly, how they switched from the beginning of the season. Because Malik, if you remember, the beginning of the season, it didn't look too hot for them. They went up against the Minnesota Vikings. They got absolutely dog walked. And that's a game where we're like, okay, maybe teams are starting to figure out the CJ Stroud-led offense. Maybe teams are starting to figure out, hey, the Texans don't have an amazing offensive line. They just scheme things up well. They do great chipping, with the running back. But last year, maybe it was a fluke. No, it wasn't just a fluke. Maybe they're just a damn good football team, and Bobby Slowick's got them boys playing. And I think it really is going to come down to the health of their wide receivers, because they are missing Nico Collins. They are seriously missing a Tank Dell's presence. So with Stephon Diggs out and this current roster, I think the X factor is going to be Tank Dell. Tank Dell has to be a superstar. Tank Dell has to come out and be a guy who really is, coming out and showing that he's a star wide receiver, and he just has not been that. So that's how I look at this receiver core, and it really puts more pressure on guys like Dalton Schultz, and it really goes out and shows a guy that we touched on, in the post-game recap show for the Bengals, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has been playing his ass off. And quite frankly, you go look at what they were doing even without Joe Mixon. They were having some success. Cam Akers was looking good. Dare Ogunbowale was being, was praised as one of the best wide receiving running backs when Joe Mixon was out. So this Houston Texans team, they're slowly becoming, and this may sound like a wild take, but they're slowly entering themselves into that tier of the Kyle Shanahan offenses, the 49ers, the Miami Dolphins, to where at some point, I think it really is plug and play. And that's what I look at with the running back. So all around the Houston Texans, I think that Stephon Diggs, the loss hurts, but I think that they're a team that really has serious potential, and they've just been consistent, and they've been uber consistent. So I'm curious. I think they get Nico Collins back within the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's going to be huge. And it really is up to, and I keep harping on, but it really is up to Tank Dell to turn this, this passing attack around, because he truly has the X factor, I believe, to be a Tyreek Hill-esque wide receiver. He just hasn't shown it so far this year. So.
Yeah, like I said, this is it's going to be interesting to see how the Texans put the pieces together. Obviously, you never want to see a player go out, especially a player that means so much to their offense. And even a veteran leader, even though I don't think he's always exhibited the best leadership qualities. It's gonna be interesting to see how they put that all together. If you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Hey, listen, I want to get our guy, TWSN analyst Parker Blake, involved in the conversation for the next topic. Chiefs go out there and they trade for Josh Uche. The rich get richer. They're undefeated, the only undefeated team remaining in the NFL. But they understand the assignment. They understand that complacency is no room in the NFL for it. So, Park, I definitely have a lot to say. Let's bring Parker Blake in here. What's going on, my man?
Hey, man, how y'all doing this morning? How y'all doing?
I think brother. I'm hearing the tone shift in your voice. I think you know exactly how we're doing, man. It's unfortunate, and we're gonna definitely have that conversation. A lot of stuff that we want to get into, a lot of stuff that we want to talk about. But I would be remiss if I didn't jump into the conversation, man, and we didn't talk right away about the Chiefs trading for a Josh Uche, and they once again proved to everybody why they've been around, why they've stayed consistent, and they've changed their stripes. They've changed their guard from, what was it, 10, 15 years ago. They understood that, hey, if we're ever going to see a championship, we maybe need to change our philosophy up a little bit. Maybe we need to be a little bit more aggressive. I also think it doesn't hurt when you have the quarterback, even though he's not playing amazing this year, but when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, it's easy for you to go all in. It's easy for you to say, hey, we'll worry about the future and the future, because that's the right mentality to look at it. What can we do to keep our championship window open, to put ourselves in a situation in which our quarterback and our team have a chance at a championship each and every single year? Kudos to the Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't rest on their laurels. They didn't say, hey, you know what? We won a championship last year. We could just punt. Our receivers are out. We're missing pass rush help. We're just gonna tackle that all in the draft. No, you know what they did? They went out there. They traded for DeAndre Hopkins. Then they say, that's not enough. We're gonna go out there because we're an equal opportunist team, if you will. We're gonna go out there and we're gonna treat our defense with the same love, and we're gonna go out there and we're gonna trade for Josh Uche, who could help us in the pass rush department. I look at what the Chiefs have done, Parker, to be honest with you, man, and I admire them. I hope that a lot of organizations can look at this team, learn from this team, and say, hey, you know what? How can we get better for the future? How can we make this thing tick for the future? What does this thing look like if we do go all in? Because you know what? There's something to be said about a team wanting to win. There's something to be said about a team that understands that their championship window is now. They understand that their quarterback is in his prime now. So let's do everything in our power to get that guy over the hump, over the hump year after year after year. Parker, I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on the situation. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on the way the Kansas City Chiefs attacked the free agent, not even free agency, but the trade deadline. And do you see any more moves for them coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the thing that I've noticed the most with their latest deals are just the value that they're getting. I mean, they got D Hop for fifth, conditional fourth. They got Uche for what, a sixth. I mean, it's crazy that they're bringing in these guys that I see as value adds early on. I know I talked about how I don't really think D Hop's the D Hop of old, but I still think that's great value for what you're getting out of him, especially in this offense, especially with how much you kind of need a guy at that spot. And I think the same thing with Uche. I mean, I think they do a great job of evaluating D-line talent. And I think you made a great point where, everything they do every offseason, whether it's the draft, it's free agent acquisition, it's trades, it all leans to like, hey, we believe in Pat and we believe in his ability to carry this team. And I think it's very similar to what you can say about the Jets, right? I mean, they brought a guy like Aaron Rodgers in and they said, hey, we believe in this guy. We'll build this team around him. Whatever we feel like can complement him, whatever he tells us that he feels like he needs, because we believe in his ability to carry this team to the end. And obviously it's working out a lot better for one of those teams than the other. But I think it speaks a lot to the faith that you have in your quarterback when you have that franchise guy that so many teams are chasing year after year after year. Once you get that guy in place and you're able to commit to him long term, I think, it just comes down to how can we surround this guy with the most talent available. And I think, again, I just want my hat tip to the Chiefs. They do a great job of evaluating defensive line talent, and they've brought in a lot of high quality guys, and they've gotten great value out of it, in my opinion. So I'm very impressed with what they're doing is from a team building perspective, and just their constant desire to just keep improving this roster. I mean, I talked all offseason about how I didn't love their roster, and they obviously understand that they needed some pieces, especially at this point in the season, and they know the trade deadline's coming up, so they're making moves, and I respect it a lot because they understand that when you're chasing championships, it's all about constantly improving and bringing in these guys that can help you do that.
No, you're right. And I think that when you look at especially the frustrating part and the props of the Chiefs is you can look at their defensive line and say, it's fine. You can look at the Chris Jones, the George Karlaftis and say, well, they've got guys there, right? You don't need to go out and do this, but they went out and they did it anyway. And I think that looking at what this brings to the team, I mean, I look at, obviously I've watched Josh Uche a lot from Michigan, but I'll just straight up look at Bill Belichick's opinion of him. And I value Bill Belichick's opinion because he coached him and he worked with him. And he said outright, and this has kind of been the theme with Bill Belichick recently, saying, hey, well, Gerard Mayo and these guys, they're blaming the players. It ain't all about the players. It ain't all their fault. And he said, this year he hasn't been utilized to rush the passer a lot because they're playing from behind. So if they're playing from behind, you can't pin your ears back because you're playing the run. And that's what he was allotted to. That's what he was, in the draft process. That was his thing, rushing the passer. So when you see 2 years ago, the fact that he had 12.5 sacks, and then you look at this year and the year before, only 2.5 sacks. The Chiefs obviously believe there's something, and respectfully, for a 6th round pick, what are you losing in this? And I think that's the biggest difference between the Chiefs, what they're doing, and some of these other organizations is, hey, are we going to hurt the ego of the starting or the other edge rusher on the Chiefs? Maybe it might hurt the room a little bit and say, oh, shit, well, or maybe it motivates them saying, we got to get our shit together. This guy's coming in and he might be able to take my spot. So I think that this is a great move. And even if it doesn't pan out, what is the worst thing? It's a 6th round pick. So the Chiefs have done a great job of aspiring to be great. And I think that's what these other teams, like we talked about the Texans, they've got to do the same thing. You're in that same window. We talk about the Bengals. Obviously, we'll talk about them in a little bit. It's the intent of the organization to get better. And I think that's where my thought process is. So I praise the Chiefs. And while this may be a move that necessarily doesn't move the needle, the upside on this is you get a valuable player that could play 35% of the snaps and add some serious value.
You're making an effort to try and get better.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing here. You're making an effort to try and get better. Doesn't mean that every piece that you acquire, every free agent signing you have, every trade you make does not mean that they're going to turn into potential future Hall of Famers and franchise cornerstones. But you realize an issue on your team and you're addressing it. You're attacking it. And there are teams out there that we'll be talking about shortly that don't do that. Now, I'm going to touch on that a little later. So I'll hold my thoughts. Do me a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live, when we upload content. Park, let's talk about Daniel's favorite team. Let's talk about the New York Football Jets and the future of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had all these demands and all these things that he wants. I look at it. They went out there, they acquired Devontae Adams, and a lot of people thought that was going to be a needle mover. I didn't think it was going to be a needle mover. And they lost to the New England Patriots. That same Patriots team we just talked about in Gerard Mayo, they just lost to. They're 2-6. Things are looking bleak in New York. Let's talk about it. What does the future hold for the New York Football Jets? Parker, what say you?
Yeah, no, I've talked about it on the show, and I've talked about it with people offline as well, where if I'm the Jets organization and I understand that we brought in Aaron Rodgers, it's not going the direction that we hoped it would go. I think everyone in the country has to, assume that you never really know if you're getting him back for another year. You could be getting him back for another 3 years, or, he could be done after the season. So I think from, if we want to stick with the front office perspective, I think it has to be, hey, we have to build as good of a team as we can behind Aaron Rodgers. And then that way, once he's gone, we don't know what pieces we're going to lose. Once Aaron Rodgers is gone, are we going to lose a Devontae Adams? Are we going to lose a Tyron Smith? Are we going to lose an Alan Lazard? Like, how many holes are we going to have to fill? I think if you can approach every offseason that you are dealing with the Aaron Rodgers situation with that mindset, I think that makes that transition out of Aaron Rodgers a lot smoother. And I think that puts you in a much higher tier of potential success moving forward from him. However, they still have 9 games left to play this year, and they are what seems like spiraling. It seems like every piece they've been able to add, and I'm sorry, Daniel, I know you look very distraught over there. I'm really sorry for your Jets, brother. But no, it really does feel like they are just finding ways to lose. And I feel like I talk every week, every time I'm on the show about, there's teams that find ways to win and there's teams that find ways to lose. And that's really what separates that middle class and turns them into high and low class NFL teams. And the Jets are a team that they have the talent. They have a lot of guys that I think a lot of people like. I mean, I like your Breece Hall. I like Garrett Wilson. And this defense has a lot of fun pieces, and it's been performing really well. but this offense can't get out of its own way. It feels like everything is disjointed, and I feel like that's just what it's going to be for them for the next 9 games. I never saw this team as a playoff team. I never saw the hype behind this team, and now we're just seeing it live. I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised. I didn't necessarily think it would be this bad. However, I didn't think it couldn't be. So I think again, moving forward, you have to ride out the players you have, these vet guys that are in there that are probably not going anywhere as long as you have Rodgers, but you also have to anticipate, hey, when Rodgers is gone, who are we losing, quote unquote, and then who's stepping in for those people.
No, you're right. And I think when you look at the Jets, what are their options? If you go and cut an Aaron Rodgers this offseason, you're coming with $45 million of dead cap. So it's probably not the greatest move. But at the same time, we discuss this. You have to find a backup plan. You have to find something that if all hell breaks loose, that you've got another option. The same thing, and maybe it's a conversation for all NFL teams when you look at your quarterback and you have to find a backup quarterback. But situation is really dire. And what I mean by that is you went all in on Aaron Rodgers. I'm talking to the front office, right? You sold your fan base on this idea of we're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers and be the Tom Brady Buccaneers. We're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers and be the Matt Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams and win a Super Bowl. Hell, you can't even win. Are you going to be a 500 team this year? And that's the issue right now. So I think that Aaron Rodgers, and it's time that we do put some blame on his shoulders. Not saying that we haven't, but he hasn't looked great. He's thrown some beautiful balls. He's, looked accurate at times, and he's looked like him and Garrett Wilson are on the same page at times. But at the end of the day, at some point, the conversation has to come to the quarterback as well. When you have weapons like Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and Breece Hall, at some point, I'm seriously going to look at the quarterback. And if you look at any situation, you put those weapons with Joe Burrow, you put those weapons with Tua, you put those weapons with any of these other quarterbacks, respectfully, I think they're having a lot more success. So I'm with you. I think that Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, he should not be the quarterback for the New York Jets in 2025. It should be an option, but that is not what I would be looking. I would say, hey, let me find somebody else that can potentially be the future. Because at this point, in this moment, I don't think Aaron Rodgers will be there for, at most, I think next year will be his last year and should be his last year with the New York Jets, because this has been downright abysmal.
I mean, let's talk about it. What coach are you bringing in here to fix that mess? Yeah. What coach are you bringing in to fix that mess? Who would have touched that with a 10-foot pole? Are you going to promote Nathaniel Hackett? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to bring Mike McCarthy in if he goes go from Dallas? Like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to monitor the situation in San Francisco and say, hey, you know what? Hopefully they let go of Kyle Shanahan. We'll bring him in. Like, what do you do to change, to change the trajectory? That's the real question. I just think that if they were going to do something special, well, it would have been this year. And they got to, they got over eager to, dismiss their head coach at the time, Robert Saleh, who I still didn't believe they would have won with. But you tanked the season when you did that. You basically said, hey, we don't know what we're doing this season, but what we do know is we got to move on off of this guy. Was Robert Saleh that bad to the point where you had to move off of him, mid-season? So for me, I think Aaron Rodgers has put this organization in a position, a very awkward position for me. A very awkward position that, is probably going to result in not obviously no championship, but will they even make the playoffs? Will they make the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers leading it? I think that there's something to be said about sacrificing your future, sacrificing team culture, sacrificing the morale of the team to satisfy an egotistical quarterback who, for the reasons we're seeing, it didn't pan out in Green Bay towards the end there. And I was of the belief that maybe he wasn't playing up to the best of his standards because he just wanted to be moved, because the Packers had no interest in moving off of him. They wanted him to stay in Green Bay for his career. Well, you look at it. Maybe the Aaron Rodgers we saw at the end of his Green Bay tenure is who he is right now. Maybe that is who he is. Maybe it's just that simple, right, Park? Maybe he is just that player.
I didn't understand the move. I didn't understand the Jets spending so much to acquire an Aaron Rodgers. I don't understand. Like, I think everyone saw kind of him falling off in Green Bay. I think everyone was kind of excited for the emergence of a Jordan Love, and they're like, okay, Aaron Rodgers can, maybe pull the Brett Favre, and as Jordan Love, takes over that job, hang out for a couple years, and maybe work with him, and then maybe move on something. Then maybe you go to the Jets, but bringing in Aaron Rodgers as like the savior of your football team never made any sense to me, because I don't think he really even was that in Green Bay. Like how much, I mean, I get that they had success in Green Bay, they had playoff victories in Green Bay, but really at the end of the day, when you look back at that career, how much like Super Bowl potential did he have and still not win one with in Green Bay? There was a lot of really good teams throughout his tenure, and I just never understood the move. I never understood what the Jets were doing with Aaron Rodgers. I never understood what the Jets were doing by bringing in. I mean, I feel like everywhere Aaron Rodgers goes, he's able to just play with his buddies. I've never understood that concept. I just, this whole Jets regime shifting to the Aaron Rodgers is going to save us mentality never made any sense to me. I never saw it going well.
Well, it's New York. It's New York, right? They go off of the big names. If they can go out there and acquire big names, it's the Big Apple, the big city. Even though it's New Jersey, they're going to sell you on that. They're going to sell you on the trade acquisitions. They're going to sell you on the future Hall of Fame quarterback that definitely has character flaws and leadership flaws. That's what the Jets faithful had hope for. And we got to look at it from this perspective. When you're a fan of the Jets, what have they had to really cling to recently, right? Geno Smith was their quarterback at one point in time, and that was made a big deal. That flopped. They had Zach Wilson, who turned out to be a bust. The last time this team really had excitement about something was when Ryan Fitzpatrick rattled off a couple of wins as their quarterback. Before that, Mark Sanchez. There wasn't too much to really, maybe that's the, maybe that's the situation in New York, right, where they have to kind of live in their reality. And I want to get to Sample's question. He says, "Are we rewriting history here? Going after an elite quarterback was the reason for going after Rodgers and catapulted into a Super Bowl contender after the trade." I'm confused what he's asking there. What is he asking there?
I think that maybe he's just asking. I don't know if he's asking necessarily about us. I think he's asking with the sentiment that it was a smart move, quote unquote, because we have seen an elite quarterback come in and get traded and go to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady did it, Matt Stafford. So I don't know if he's saying, but I think that's why the situations are two different ones. And I think that's when you look at
I think that Aaron Rodgers is a very different leader from Tom Brady. So I agree with you, Sample, in that regard. I feel like maybe the Jets saw what Tom Brady was able to do with Tampa and thought maybe, hey, we can go out there, we can get that guy, and we can have a lot of success with Aaron Rodgers as our quarterback. But the fact of the matter is there were so many ingredients that took place, that there were so many things that Buccaneers had to get in order before they even acquired a Tom Brady. There were so many organizational structural changes that had to take shape. And basically Robert Saleh was the head coach of the Jets, and here's a guy that's basically fighting for his coaching future. This is such a pivotal year for him, and he didn't even get to see the life of the season, and he was let go already. So that tells you where the Jets were with him already. At least Tom Brady had an offensive-minded coach. Okay. He says, let's get to his question. He said that it didn't make sense to go after Rodgers a few minutes ago. Who said that exactly? Was that you, Daniel, that said that? Okay, let me jump in here. At the end of the day, I think that I don't know who said that. I didn't say that. But what I will say is the Jets probably looked at the Aaron Rodgers situation, saw it as a desperation move. Their rookie quarterback, well, not rookie quarterback, but their first round pick that they drafted had not panned out. So they were clinging to hope. The only way to kind of suffice the fan base and not get this fan base up in arms and pissed off and upset, they had to make some type of a move because it was very clear they were stuck in the mud with the Zach Wilson at quarterback. And rather than just rebuild the entire prospect, because you do have a talented receiver in Garrett Wilson, you did make a lot of notable acquisitions to your team. Well, let's go out there, future Hall of Fame quarterback that is clearly on the outs with his team in the Packers. It made sense why they went after Aaron Rodgers, but make no
Yep.
mistake about it. They didn't think this thing through. It felt very forced. It felt like they were throwing a lot of shit to the wall, hoping that it stuck. And I'm be honest with you, after Aaron Rodgers blew his Achilles year one, all the air of Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, kind of went out the balloon, if you will.
Yeah.
All the excitement, all the air, all the potential that we talked about with this team having went out of the balloon for a little bit. So going into this year, it felt like, hey, you know what? Let's acquire this player. Let's acquire that player. Let's acquire Mike Williams. Let's acquire a Devontae Adams. You do all that kind of stuff with the thought process of trying to help your quarterback and Aaron Rodgers feel more comfortable and more settled into this new team. It did not pan out. And Eric Johnson, you're not saying anything anybody doesn't know. It's our job. He says Rodgers wanted to be where Hackett was, plain and simple. Rodgers wanted this. Well, the Broncos wanted Aaron Rodgers. That was their initial plan. That's why they hired Nathaniel Hackett. It didn't work out that way. But the fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers, this whole situation did not pan out the way that the Jets had, I guess, intended for it. Yeah. And my only pushback for that is I don't think they did enough proper planning. Yeah. I felt like the Aaron Rodgers. Remember, there was a lot of speculation of who was going to trade for Aaron Rodgers in that offseason. Would it be the Broncos, right? Or would it be the Jets? Then it was like, okay, we're not trading Aaron Rodgers. Then boom, the trade happens. And then it's like, all right, let's put all these eggs in one basket to make it work. And then opening series, the guy blows Achilles. It's a story that you can't even write. So for me, I look at it and I say, you knew that there was definitely some leadership inconsistencies with Aaron Rodgers. You knew what you were sort of getting to a degree. I don't think anybody expected it to be this bad. And Sample said Parker said it. I don't know if Parker was.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was me, brother. That was me. I got you.
Okay. Did you want to touch on that anymore?
Well, yeah. I think to his original point. I mean, if you're bringing in an Aaron Rodgers to be a Tom Brady or a Matt Stafford, you're wrong. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think that's where the difference is. And when you go back and look at, hindsight, I think you really go look at the track record of an Aaron Rodgers. And that's why I don't think the Jets were necessarily in the wrong for thinking that could be the spark. Because when you think about it from a logical standpoint, if they look that bad with Zach Wilson, you would hope that an Aaron Rodgers would really take them to the next level. But at this point right now, this should show you everything. Yes, I'm with you, Parker. I think that Aaron Rodgers is definitely declining. But this should also show where the state of the organization is. Because as simple as I can put it, how do you go from the past 2 years of it being, it's all Zach Wilson's fault. It's all Zach Wilson's fault. It's all Zach Wilson. We just need a quarterback. And you're having the same exact issues right now. This is an organizational issue. And this is something where you can pinpoint the same thing we talked about with the Dallas Cowboys. We can pinpoint the same thing we talked about with the Cleveland Browns, right? There is something that needs to be studied with this organization to why the Browns have it with quarterbacks so far. And right now, the Jets, what is going on? Because in my opinion, I don't necessarily know if this was solely Aaron Rodgers' fault. This is the organization's fault. And they've got some serious, looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, hey, Joe Douglas, how can you turn this around or else your ass is out the door? So you've got to provide some sort of spark for the fan base. And I think that they still have a chance to turn it around, not with Aaron Rodgers, but to slow down the issues, because I don't think that they're in cap hell next year. They got a lot of these veterans for, shorter contracts. So I'd be curious to see Joe Douglas. What's his plan moving forward? And I think it would be a major F up if they went and reloaded this offseason for an Aaron Rodgers push next year.
Now, you do realize that the chance of that happening is very likely, right? If Aaron Rodgers wants to play again, they're going to do whatever they can to help rectify the situation. The fact of the matter is, I'll say what no one wants to say, what Parker sort of said, it reeked of desperation. Acquiring Aaron Rodgers reeked of desperation. It felt like a move that the organization was just trying to make to try to have something to cling on to. And I think that's why they're not having a lot of success. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live, when we upload content from the TWSN Studios Park. Let's keep the conversation rolling. There's a team in the AFC North that is balling right now. No, it's not the Baltimore Ravens, but it is the Pittsburgh Steelers, which brings up the question, are the Pittsburgh Steelers title contenders? They're 6-2. It don't matter if Justin Fields is the quarterback. It don't matter if Russell Wilson's the quarterback, this team is finding a way to get it done. I don't like it. Because they're not doing anything spectacular. They're not reinventing the wheel. They're playing defense. They're managing the clock. They're moving the ball down the field, and they're winning games. Parker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, pretenders and contenders, not that we are, but just when people are looking at some of these teams, I feel like the Steelers come up a lot as far as, is this team legit? Is this team actually a contender? When are the wheels going to fall off? But I mean, if you look through, I mean, they don't have quality wins. I think that, I mean, they've beaten the Broncos, they've beaten, the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants. Like they're not beating these high level teams, but I think they're playing a level of football that you're not really designed to go and blow out teams like the Bills are. You're designed to honestly keep as many games as you can close and just try and get your defense to win games for you. And I think they're succeeding at that style of football. And I think that's what we expected when they came into the season, and they're just executing it at a high level. And the thing that I think people don't want to talk about is it's hard to beat that style of football. And I've talked about it for a long time, but especially like if you're a team, not that they are, but just for example, if you're a team looking to rebuild, you should always attack you should be your defense first. Go get a high level running back. They invested a lot in Najee Harris, whether he's performed up to that standard or not. I think fans will say that he hasn't until for just recently. But then you go and you invest in a defense and you invest in a punter. You go win the field position battle, and you find a defense that is hard to scheme for because it's a defense that can create turnovers, can create points, and can just, really keep your offense off the field, especially in today's NFL where you are trying to get that franchise quarterback who's going to carry your team and is going to be able to break games. And if he decides to take a game over, it's going to happen. You're going to win the game through that quarterback. But if you get these defenses out on the field that are relatively cheaper to invest in, then I think it can really turn around an organization a lot faster than people imagine. I mean, you right now, you're rocking, a combined room of Justin Fields, who wasn't even – that's a whole situation. But with Russell Wilson right now, and I mean, this team looks legit. And, like, it doesn't feel like there's necessarily an easy way to stop that. Because, you can stymie the offense, and that's great. But if you hold the offense to 7, the Steelers defense is going to shut you out. If you hold the Steelers offense to 17, they're going to allow 14 or less. And like that's just it's a style of football that isn't as entertaining to watch. People don't love watching it unless you're really a sicko, but I think it's awesome. It's fun to watch this Steelers team just show the NFL that defense still matters and defense can win championships. I think they're legit because it's hard to see really any offense right now that's going to provide a problem for the Steelers defense, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that they're a fun team. And I think that it's not necessarily, like I said, it's not an exciting team, but it's a team that you really can dive deep into. And one thing you said, special teams. That's one of the reasons they won by 8 points. So I wasn't super impressed Monday Night Football, but I think they blocked a couple kicks. They easily, their special team was dominant yesterday, and it's been dominant for a long time. Kicker's been absolutely balling out. And I think that this is a team where this is kind of their MO, and this is what Mike Tomlin does. He's got a great culture, and I really like what they're doing. If we're talking about them being contenders, I think that they're fine, and that's where my issue comes in come playoff time is I think at some point come playoff time, you're going to need it always comes down to the quarterbacks, in my opinion. Yeah. You're going to need to have them come in and make a big-time play, and I think that they're a team where they're going to give a team a tough fight in the playoffs. I think they could even win one game, but is this team anything different than what I saw, in 2019 or 2020 when they faced the Browns in the playoffs? I don't think so. What about the same thing when they faced the Chiefs? I think that the only thing that's different now is they've obviously got a far better quarterback than I wonder if that was Hodges, or I forgot who was the quarterback there. I like Russell Wilson. I like what they're doing, and they showed it's not about the quarterback. Justin Fields was 3-1, 4-1 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's not about the quarterback. It's about the culture. It's about the defense. It's about the little minute things that they're doing. And they're a very, very, very good football team. I just don't think that they can rattle off 3 straight wins against CJ Stroud, Mahomes, Burrow, and Josh Allen. And I truly think that's what it comes down to. I don't want people to think I'm just simplifying it to quarterbacks, but we've seen it time and time again in the playoffs. It really does come down to quarterbacks, unless if you're a Detroit Lions team or a San Francisco 49ers team. And I don't think that this Pittsburgh Steelers team is on the tier of what the 49ers had last year with McCaffrey, with all their weapons, or hell, what the Lions had last year with Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think that they have that type of punch on offense. I think Najee has looked great. I think that George Pickens is a guy that has looked absurd with Russell Wilson. I love the chemistry they have, but I really think they're going to lack juice in the playoffs come playoff time. And I wouldn't be shocked if they won one playoff game, but I really struggle to see them in the AFC Championship. But hey, they could come out and shock me. But yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. The thing is with the Steelers' schedule this year is they're not really going to get the opportunity to face a lot of teams that are going to push those buttons that you want to see them prove in the regular season before they get to the playoffs. And I think that's why, they kind of got stunned in their playoff game that they lost against the Browns, where they kind of go throughout the year and they're able to win against some even slightly above average teams. Like the Steelers played the Chiefs this year. The AFC North's always been revered as a tough division, so they got to play the Ravens twice. And I think that's a team, on the rise right now that's kind of considered to be at the top of the league. But by the time they get to the playoffs, I agree with you 100%. They haven't really had a true test of like, oh, who's really going to give this defense fits. And so I think you can almost come into the playoffs a little overinflated, even no matter where your seeding is. You can feel a little more confident in your team than maybe you should. And that's why I think they struggle to see playoff success as of late. And that's where I wish they had a better schedule in front of them where they were going to play some legit quarterbacks with some legit offenses that were going to strain them. But I don't think they will. And so I do agree. I think I can consider them contenders as far as they're going to be contending for a division title. They're going to be contending for a top 4 seed. However, I don't see them contending for a Super Bowl necessarily. So guess I should clarify that. But I do think it's a legit team, but I just don't think they see enough this year in the regular season to really, go into the playoffs prepared.
Yeah. If you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. We're going to get to our Zach Taylor talk, but before we do, I got to ask Parker. Parker, what is one take from NFL Week 8? Like an overreaction that you think that comes to mind, or maybe that you saw on social media. What is one take? I'm going to go to you, then I'm going to go to Daniel, then I'll give mine.
Yeah, no, I was excited. I actually prepped for this segment today. But I want to know, I guess my question is, who is the, faker or the fraud team in the AFC playoff race right now out of these 5, 6, 7 win teams, or even across the NFL right now? And why is it the Houston Texans with their plus 9 point differential? It's the worst point differential of any 5, 6, 7 win team in the league right now. Their wins come against very weak teams, and they've lost really against the 2 best teams they've played outside of the Bills. They had a great game against the Bills. They won by 3, but you lost to the Packers. You've beaten the Colts twice, which is, I guess, is impressive, but is it really? Then you've won against the Bears. You've won against the Jaguars. You've won against the Patriots, which none of those are really significant wins. And you lost to the Vikings and Packers. So I don't understand why people are seeing this Houston team as this kind of juggernaut. That's, they might be, what are they, 6-2 right now? Mm-hmm. But they have that upside. They have all the potential. And now you've lost a guy in Stephon Diggs that I only really saw as a 1-year guy anyway. I only saw him as kind of a stopgap as they transitioned to more of a younger wide receiver core. But I just don't believe in this Texans team. I think they're really just stringing stuff together, and they're faking it till they make it. We'll see if they make it.
Wow. Yeah, I don't agree with that, and I think that's gonna. They're a team that I really do think that they are one of the X factors in this AFC, and I'm with you. I think that there's a world where they don't have success. I just think I'm not too concerned about their schedule. I think that the Packers game was a perfect encapsulation of what this team is right now, to where CJ threw for like 80 yards and they were still in that game to the end. So I think I'm with you. And it's going to take, I think right now at this current moment, they may be pretenders, but I do think that if they can get that Tank Dell to come out and explode, we've seen Joe Mixon, this rushing attack, look great. That's going to be my biggest X factor. I do think that they're a team there. I'd be curious to see how they look later in the playoff or later in the season. My overreaction, this is totally an overreaction, so I don't want you guys to think I'm crazy. Jaden Daniels is a
I
top
knew you were going to
5,
say this. I knew you were
a
going to say
top
this.
5 quarterback in the
I knew
NFL.
it.
Listen, I this dude is playing absurd. The one pushback I will say that I'm struggling with, and I haven't watched the film of Marcus Mariota, is why and how did he look so good in that offense? That one game that he played without Jaden Daniels. And that's what I got to go back and look at. But this offense looks so good under Jaden Daniels. And I'm not saying that he's going to be a future superstar, because I do think right now a lot of it is his legs. You look at, he's scrambling the most out of any quarterback in the NFL, but the way he's just making plays, and even go look at that Chicago Bears game, he was playing great. He threw for 340, no interceptions, and he was looking damn good. He wasn't the reason why they were on track to lose that game. They had multiple touchdowns called back by penalties. He has looked flawless. He has looked absurd. His deep ball is, from the first 2 weeks, it was, damn, the dude can't pass for a deep ball to save his life. And now he's one of the most accurate deep ball passers in the NFL. He's making plays outside of the structure, and he's going through his progressions. And he really is just an X factor to where, hey, Cliff Kingsbury and the offense, they're making it super easy, right? A ton of quick screens to the wide receivers. But when you go look at what he's making opposing defenses do because of his legs and because he's got a deep ball, it really is, what can you do to slow him down? And at this point, teams haven't shown what they can do to slow him down. So I do think that there's a chance he does hit the rookie wall. But right now, he is playing no doubt like a top 5 quarterback, if not a top 3 quarterback right now. And it really does beg the question, how good is he going to be? And I think he's a top 5 quarterback I think he's of the Lamar Jackson S tier quarterbacks right now. So that's my overreaction.
Here's my overreaction. Cliff Kingsbury is going to find himself as a head coach again this offseason. Some team around the league is going to look at the job that he did with Jaden Daniels, because nobody expected Jaden Daniels to do this. If they did, Jaden Daniels would have went first overall. They're going to look at the job that he did with Jaden Daniels. They're going to say to themselves, it must have been the Arizona Cardinals as to why Cliff Kingsbury didn't do great in that dysfunction with the general manager being a drunk. There must be a reason why Cliff Kingsbury didn't have success there. I mean, they're going to say, you know what? Let's do something that, has happened time and time again. Let's see if Cliff Kingsbury can actually be a good head coach, and they're going to hire him to be their head coach. And I'm wondering to myself, will it be a contender? Will it be a team that, maybe might find themselves looking for a head coach, but they have a roster in place already? But I could definitely see Cliff Kingsbury back on a sideline as a head coach next football season. One thing I will also say, overreaction wise, I think you're going to see some defensive coordinators get some head coaching candidates as well, head coaching consideration this offseason as well. I think Brian Flores will have his name right up there, for contention for a head coaching job. I just think that some of the job, I would say that some of these defense coordinators are doing around the league, it's bringing defense back almost. I think Ben Johnson will find himself as a head coach this upcoming year, if he chooses to be. What did they put up 56 points or 50 some? That's absurd. So I definitely think Ben Johnson will find himself as a head coach at some point this year. I know my takes weren't really as like team oriented, but more so potential coaching oriented stuff. But that's something that I definitely could see happening. Do us a favor, guys. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. Hey, let's talk about the Bengals. We're keeping it on the head coaching talk. Is Zach Taylor on the hot seat? You guys certainly know what my thoughts are, and if you don't, you will hear shortly. Is Zach Taylor on the hot seat? Bengals aren't an organization that allows a lot to leak, unless it comes to me, of course. But Parker, I got to ask your thoughts on that, man. Do you think Zach Taylor is on the hot seat?
I mean, I've had him on the hot seat personally. I know we talked about this a while ago. I guess I have to, with the Bengals organization, I have to ask, do you think, is that for my opinion, the fans' opinion, or the organization's opinion? Because I think it takes a lot to get Zach Taylor or any Bengals head coach to a legitimate hot seat situation just in the eyes of the Bengals front office. I mean,
Yeah.
fans talk for how long about how long Marvin Lewis was there. I mean, it even got to the point where even media was like, I don't understand, why they're not even considering a move with this guy. I do wonder if that's kind of the trajectory Zach Taylor's on. And I brought it up where I thought the extension was weird. I didn't understand the timing of that extension, especially with how significant that was as far as the timeline goes. And I do wonder if the margin of error is, hey, just don't go under 500 and we don't even have this conversation. But if you go under 500, we at least have to have the conversation. If you could consider that a hot seat, then sure, he's on the hot seat, in my opinion, for the Bengals, front office. But I don't think that's the case. I think this guy could legitimately find a way to just 9-8 by the end of the year, and maybe even miss the playoffs again. But I think he'd still be fine. I think he'd be in it for at least another year. But that's just where I'm at with it. I think he's going to have to seriously have this team underperform, and that's where people talk about the Bengals being sellers, and it's like I don't think they're going to be a seller. I think they're going to ride the wave until it goes under 500, and then they're going to potentially have that conversation.
My issue with this whole discussion right now is how, and rightfully so, Bengals fans have a right to once again feel that, hey, nothing's ever going to change. The only thing that I will say is look at what the star players are alluding to right now, and that's what my thought process goes to, right? What is the culture of this locker room? What does this locker room feel about Zach Taylor? And I go look at somebody like Jamar Chase, Malik, you and Zim talked about on the post-game recap show, right? Like, hey, what is one dude that is always, unapologetically himself? And that's Jamar Chase. And what did he say after the game? He didn't say anything crazy, but stuff like this leads me to believe that there is blame to be passed towards Zach Taylor's head. He said, just one call I wish we could have taken back and changed to something else. But we called it and it happened. I don't mind being aggressive, just they were on it. He was talking about the 4th down play where, it was they got stopped, and that's kind of what changed the entire course of the game. And for right or for wrong, if your star wide receiver is putting blame on the head coach, because sure as hell in that moment, Jamar is saying it ain't on him. Like he's saying it didn't work out, but that wasn't my call. That's not my job. My job is not to call that play. And I feel like that's been a constant theme of the Zach Taylor era, especially when they are losing, right? And this isn't a place where, obviously winning cures all, but specifically with this team recently, a lot of it has been, hey, I'm doing my job. Joe Burrow at the beginning of the season, he's doing his job. And that's what concerns me with this Bengals locker room right now. Hey, there's a real world where if this season doesn't go according to plan, where Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase get visibly frustrated. And I would hope that the organization will look at how much money that they're paying Joe Burrow, how much money they're hopefully paying Jamar Chase, and say, hey, we have to value those two guys' input. And if those two guys are looking and saying, hey, well, we don't necessarily we ain't the reason why we losing right now. So I think that there's a serious world where Zach Taylor should be on the hot seat. And especially, I don't even think somebody's saying about the Raiders game. If you lose against the Raiders, I don't even consider that a hot seat. I consider that just inevitable at that point. If you go 3-6 to start the season, at that point, your season's pretty much lost, and you're going to be losing the locker room after, 3 straight losses. At that point, that's not the hot seat, in my opinion. That's inevitable. He won't be, the head coach after this year. But that's when I look at the rest of the season is, hey, how do they finish off the season, right? Do they finish off the season on a hot streak, on a 6-game win streak after the bye week? Because if you do, that makes this decision a lot more difficult for the front office.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it should be, because I feel like the tea leaves are there. I feel like everything is there for you on a silver platter. And we discussed this before, but this past game was pretty much indicative of what this organization is. Joe Burrow bails out the team on multiple occasions. The Giants game, he did it on, the play with Jamar Chase. He makes extremely amazing plays. And the rest of the team in critical moments mess up big time. And you just lack that oomph to get back after that big time loss on the 4th down. So I don't think that losing Zach Taylor would hurt this team an awful lot if you don't make the playoffs. I don't think that losing Zach Taylor would hurt this team an awful lot if you go 8-9. I don't think it would. And I feel like that's the conversation the Bengals organization needs to have, is, hey, what are we losing with Zach Taylor? We're losing out on $10 million? Okay. But are we bringing in a head coach that we feel like takes us a step much closer to a Super Bowl, because I promise you, and Parker and Malik, you guys can both agree, a Super Bowl cures all. And that's my thought process right now, is the same philosophy with trading for players. If you lose out on $10 million in the future, if you lose out on a third round pick in the future, but you put yourself in a position where you're in the AFC Championship and you're right there for it, I don't give a damn what that third round pick means. I don't give a damn about the $10 million I paid Zach Taylor to sit on his ass if the season weren't to go well, but next year you give yourself a head coach and it puts you in a better position. So
Hey, now $4.5 million.
would it be $4.5 million, not 10 million?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what he does when he's making it.
All right. All right. So that's where that's I don't know where I saw that $10 million. Maybe that was dead cap. How many more years does he have left on his
He
contract?
signed through the 2026 season. So
Okay.
2026 season would be, him and his coordinators all got extensions around that time.
So $4.5 million a year. And that's where, if the season doesn't go to coordinating plan, it doesn't finish off, and you don't make the playoffs, and something's got to change. You would hope so.
I just think the standard is 100% raised now. I think that even the Brown family could look at it and say, under no circumstances should this team be fighting for playoff lives, or not even in the playoff picture right now, with Joe Burrow healthy, with Jamar Chase out there, and with the talent that they have on the team. There's no room for it. There are teams that with less talented rosters that are out there that are in playoff contention, and the Bengals are not. This team is 0-4 at home. That matters to the family. It does. I think that the standard definitely does get raised when you go to a Super Bowl, when you see how close you are and things don't plan out the way you expect them to. I think the expectations 100% gets raised, and I think the standard has been raised. That's the one thing about winning. When you come close to it, you have to start looking at coaching, because then you have to ask yourself, okay, if we got this close and then we find ourselves declining, on the decline, what needs to change? I don't agree with the sentiment that it's the same old Bengals. Personally, I don't buy into that notion. I think that it's a completely different regime. I'll also remind y'all that it wasn't Mike Brown that was spearheading the Zach Taylor signing. It was Katie Blackburn. It was the Blackburns that did that. And I think that they might move a little bit different from the father. I think they probably felt the dad stayed a little bit too close to Marvin Lewis, and Marvin Lewis stayed a little bit too long. They were okay with moving off of Marvin Lewis, right? They put their own eggs in a basket when they went out there and they hired a Zach Taylor. They were in charge of that. Mike Brown was obviously had a hand in it, but I believe it was them, from everything that I know. It was Katie Blackburn, who really, and Troy, that kind of headed up that decision-making process. I don't know if they're going to be like their dad and stick by Zach Taylor as long as they have, if things keep trending on this trajectory. Now, needless to say, here's what I'll say. I think that if the Bengals want to seriously contend, I do think they also should consider a potential shift from Duke Tobin. There's a guy in the Bengals front office that's been getting a lot of praise and a lot of GM consideration. The Patriots wanted to the Patriots wanted to interview him, and Trey Brown. The Raiders wanted to interview him, and Trey Brown. I wonder, he's currently the Bengals senior personnel executive or something like that. But he has in hand in roster construction. He helps Duke Tobin out, but he's not the lead man. I think that ideally, if they were to make a move, I wonder would they go after? I wonder would they actually hire a general manager or someone to actually have the title? I don't know if they would go that far. And I also don't know if the change would come from in-house or out. I have no idea, but I don't know. I think Trey Brown is a name that you would think that the family would consider if Duke Tobin was to step aside or whatever the case may be. But I also think for a team that talks about listening to their fan base and changing of the guard and wanting to sell tickets and wanting the fan base to be excited. I have a hard time seeing them not listen to the outcry of the fan base. If the fan base is unhappy, or they notice that the seats aren't being filled, or people not renewing their season tickets, I have a hard time seeing this team not being able to potentially change their stance or their positioning on a coach or a situation. I don't believe that it's the same old Cincinnati Bengals. I think that there's a couple of things that went into Mike Brown keeping Marvin Lewis as long as he did. One thing people have to realize, they had a friendship. They had a friendship, like a genuine friendship. The way they talk about each other was like they were best friends. They met every single Monday. They would have conversations, and that was a relationship that lasted the better part of over 15 years. He was the first coach in the Mike Brown-led Bengals era that shifted the outlook of Bengals football outside of the Cincinnati market. He did so much good for this team. Obviously did not result in playoff success, but when you hear the stories of the players, like Daniel and I are very fortunate. We work closely with Willie Anderson and TJ Houshmandzadeh, and you hear these stories of how the Bengals used to operate before Marvin. Marvin made this organization a respectable organization. So when you've had so much success with one coach and you've won division titles with that coach, the coach that won the most division titles in Bengals history with that one coach, of course you're going to be reluctant to move off. You've ever been in a relationship, it don't matter how bad the relationship is. If you've been friends with somebody for 15 plus years or in a relationship with somebody for 10 years, you're going to be a little scared to start over. You're going to be like, what does that look like? I don't know if Zach Taylor has that same leash that Marvin Lewis has. I don't believe he has that same leash that Marvin Lewis has. I think that there was a lot that went into place. I think that there was a lot that went into place that allowed Marvin Lewis to build some favor with this organization. Remember, there was a point in time where Marvin Lewis was going to step down as the Bengals head coach. People don't remember that. And Mike Brown begged him to stay. But it was because Marvin Lewis wanted Mike Brown to give up some more autonomy to him. There was a point in time where Marvin Lewis was going to step down as Bengals head coach and move on because he was getting tired of the job. I don't know if you guys know that. But guess what? That was a relationship that spanned over 15 plus years. There's a reason why that guy was in place for as long as he was. Zach Taylor, before Joe Burrow, wasn't able to put it together. With Joe Burrow, outside of that maybe 2 seasons, has not been able to put it together. And now you have a season where there was so much expectation going into this year. And this has been the most abysmal season, I would say, under the Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow era together. And I think there's something to be said about that. So I would just push back and say, hey, guys, don't settle for the norm and just think that this family is going to settle just for Zach Taylor and mediocrity. You continue to be loud. You continue to talk about how unhappy you guys are, voice your concerns with this team. They read all of that shit. They read all of it. This team didn't just start going on social media afterwards. And let me tell you something else. This coaching staff is on social media. They got burned. They see all that shit. They do. Trust and believe that. But I don't agree with the notion. I do not agree with the notion that, hey, you know what? It's going to be the same old Bengals. The Bengals are going to keep Zach Taylor. I firmly believe in my heart, if this Bengals team misses the playoffs and Joe Burrow stays healthy and they don't do that bullshit where they rattle off a couple of wins at the end of the season and miss the playoffs, as long as they don't do that, I think Zach Taylor's out of here personally. I think you have to. What do you sell to the fan base? Listen, I'm telling you right now, it's his ass is a little bit more on the hot seat than I think people want to give credit to. And again, I'm just going off of just tea leaves and how the organization has really shifted and reshaped the image. If this team wants to contend and this team wants to win a championship, I don't think they're looking at, oh, well, they went to the playoffs, in the Super Bowl that one year with Zach Taylor and they just fell short. I think the pressure's on, man. I think the pressure's on, man. I think the pressure is on. I think he needs to find a way to win. And I think the look that we saw from Joe Burrow in that post-game press conference, says a lot. I'm really curious. Doesn't he speak to the media either today or tomorrow? I think tomorrow.
I think Wednesday.
Should be.
I'm curious to see what his overall feeling is, now that the dust has settled a little bit. But they're going to definitely have to rattle off some wins here in order for Zach Taylor to feel comfortable. You can't lose to the Raiders. You can't lose to the Raiders. That's my thought process. You have to take it one game at a time. You got to take it one game at a time. And I'm curious just to see how the roster rallies. If this locker room will continue to go out there and push, been a Bengals fan for a very, very long time, my entire life. Obviously building up connections throughout the organization, you get close to things. And I will tell you, things are a little bit different. There's a story that I think I'll share probably in the off season. And there's a reason why I feel the way that I feel. Let's just say shit got shaken up after their beginning of their first season together, the Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo, Brian Callahan era. Things got shaken up, and it wasn't from a Zach Taylor thing. It was from a Blackburn Brown family situation that took place, to where I feel like they understand that if changes need to happen, changes will happen. And it ain't Mike Brown spearing this thing ahead, if you ask me. But guys, do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Park, is there anything else that you want to add, man, before we head out of here, brother? With you?
No, sir. I just, I think the biggest thing for me is no matter what kind of makeup you put on it the next 9 games, this team started out 3-5. Don't let anything that happens the rest of the season change that mindset. You got to remember, this team always gets off to slow starts, man. That's something you have to carry with you. I don't care if they finish, whatever it might be at the end of the year. You still started out 3-5, and you lost games you should not have been losing. So that's just something that I think about all the time. But I appreciate you having me on. Excited to get into this Bengals film today. Now that the all 22 is going to be released, I get my grades out today. That's what I got planned for the rest of the day, man. Always appreciate it.
Our brother, we appreciate you too, man. And I look forward to being back live with you on Thursday. We won't have a State of the Jungle on Wednesday. We'll be doing State of the Jungle Thursday this week, actually. But I'll be doing 2 shows on Thursday, man. And I'm excited to talk with you, brother.
Yeah, y'all take it easy, man. I'll see you then.
Okay. Yes, sir, man. Yes, sir. Listen, guys, do a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications. Let's get to our favorite NBA bets, Danny, before we head out of here. Daniel, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a huge fan of some of these bets that we got going on today. And once again, as always, make sure you guys go subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. You guys can go check out all the content that we got going on there. Yesterday, we had a pretty good day. There was a lot of, bets that we had that we rattled off, and we said some of them on the show, and some of them, Jalen Green, we had a decent amount that actually did well. So make sure you guys go subscribe. We've got the QR code right up here, so go check it out. We've got 4 games on today, a very small slate for the NBA, but to be honest, I personally like smaller slates because you can kind of dial in on specific plays. I'm looking at the first matchup, and it's the Denver Nuggets versus the Brooklyn Nets. It's a matchup that I personally really like, and I'm going to go with something super simple. It may sound like, a very chalky play, but give me Nikola Jokic's over in rebounds. The Denver Nuggets are a team where they are going to play Nikola Jokic 35 to 40 minutes, and they're facing a team in the Brooklyn Nets that can't rebound for shit, respectfully. They can't, and they're playing a lineup to where Nick Claxton is 7 foot, but he's only playing around 20 minutes a night right now. He's slowly ramping up. He didn't start last game, but he might be starting tonight. I'm not quite sure, but he is going to be a guy where Nikola Jokic can dominate him on the rebounds. I think 12.5 is just far too low for rebounding for Nikola Jokic. I really like that. And then when I look at one more, I mean, we've got a bunch more heading out onto the Patreon, But I'm looking at the Sacramento Kings. And the Kings are a team that I love betting on them. I love betting on De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, even a Keegan Murray. But I'm looking at strictly De'Aaron Fox, and I think he's got a great matchup heading up against these Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz point guard and shooting guard, they're not great defenders. Colin Sexton, Keontae George are two guys so where they're fast-paced, they're quick guys, quick twitch on offense, but their defense isn't great. So De'Aaron Fox's line is only at 23.5. And I know they added DeMar DeRozan, but I'm definitely looking at De'Aaron Fox to come out here and have a big-time game on Tuesday. So I like De'Aaron Fox's points. And if there's one more that I personally like, I definitely like, and this is a guy, he plays for the Golden State Warriors, been a huge fan of him for, the past last year. And the New Orleans Pelicans can't rebound. They don't have a center in place. And their biggest guy really is Zion Williamson, who's 6'9". And I look at who's going to be rebounding for the Golden State Warriors, and it's Trace Jackson Davis. I think that Trace Jackson Davis has an amazing matchup here. Like I said, they've got Steph Curry, they've got Buddy Hield, but outside of that, nobody else is really scoring. Nobody else is really doing a whole lot for the Golden State Warriors. And I think Trace Jackson Davis is playing 30 minutes a night. He's the center heading up against a team that doesn't have a center. It really is that simple for me. Trace Jackson Davis over 17.5 points and rebounds. Like I said, that covers my ass if he goes out and has a good game points wise, but I'm very confident that he's going to come out. He's playing 30 minutes a night. And like I said, the matchup is absolutely amazing for him. So Trace Jackson Davis over 17.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I'm a huge fan of it.
Man. Yeah, I like some of those plays. There's a couple of games on the on tap for tonight that I'm a big fan of. Obviously, Dallas Mavericks taking on the Timberwolves, Nuggets taking over the Brooklyn Nets. Russell Westbrook has really disappointed me this season and his ability to get more points. I don't know. That's just something that I'm looking at. I'll have more plays, obviously, when they right like a little bit right before the games. Obviously, I'll put them out on the Patreon. And make sure you guys subscribe to the TWSN Patreon if you haven't done so already. But here's what I'll say. Anthony Edwards over 26.5 points is a play that I absolutely love tonight. I love that play because I think that he's going to have a big game, especially going up against Luka. I think he's going to be looking to prove that he is the face of the new face of the NBA, although I think Luka's better than him. As far as the Nuggets versus the Brooklyn Nets tonight, shockingly, it's only the Nuggets are only at minus 184 for that game. I'm taking the Nuggets money line, and you guys never hear me say take money line ever, but I'm definitely taking the Nuggets money line. I like Jokic's assist, and I think Jokic has a triple double tonight against the Nets. Over 8.5 assists, and that's sitting at plus money. So if you're looking to make yourself some money, tackle that. That's a play that I love. Those are two plays that I love. I have more picks on the TWSN Patreon, so make sure you guys subscribe to that. Make sure you guys keep it locked to what we're doing. The one thing I will say before we head out of here is regarding our Bengals talk. And I don't want people to sleep on this at all. Okay. On December 24th in 1991, the Bengals owner, Mike Brown, fired Sam Weish 3 years after a Super Bowl appearance. That's just some food for thought. After end of this season, it'll make 3 years since Zach Taylor touched the Super Bowl with the Cincinnati Bengals. They did it once. It wouldn't shock me if they did it again. He's got to find a way to win. Ross is just too talented. And by the way, that was after in 1989 when he signed a 5-year contract with the Bengals. Right? So he had some years left on that deal, 2 to be exact. You know who else has 2 years left on the deal? Zach Taylor. So don't sleep. History has a funny way of repeating itself. Zach Taylor better find a way to start rattling off some wins here. It happened to Sam Weish. It could happen to him. We appreciate you guys for waking up, making us a part of your daily routine. Remember, there's only one way you should be waking up, talking sports, having the conversation, and that is the right way. We'll see you guys back here Thursday morning. We'll see you guys back here Thursday morning at 10 a.m. for another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik Wright.